Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands Podcast with Kelly Bennett. I have a very special guest because their brand is seriously mentioned probably every other episode of Emerging Brands Podcast as being such an awesome retail partner to launch emerging food and beverage brands in particular. Katherine Lewin, founder and CEO of Big Night, is on the show. And Katherine, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun.
So fun. So, Big Night is one of my personal favorite shops in New York City. It's where I go for my own home when I have a hosting gift I want to get, when I also want to discover really cool brands. So, can you walk us through the behind the scenes of how you started Big Night?
Totally. Big Night was an idea that I had in peak pandemic lockdown, like road tripping in the car in December 2020, looking at Instagram, seeing how much people were cooking, even if they were just cooking for themselves, a partner, a roommate, a pod. And just it hit me in that moment like, wow, there's such a renewed interest in cooking because we can't leave our homes. But
Right.
how ironic is it that we can't, you know, beyond our families, like we're really not able to gather around food. People were like making sourdough, growing their own scallions, but like they couldn't share that with friends. And I started thinking about how the dinner party was going to be something that felt really exciting to do once we felt safe enough to host, just like traveling to Rome or sitting at your favorite bar.
Right.
Like, wow, like that experience is going to feel like sparkly and different again. But also, will any of us remember how to host? Like at that time, it was like, do I even own like serving platters? Like, how do you cook for more than that one person you've been seeing like 24/7 for the last 6 months? Like, and so I thought, what if there was a place that inspired and empowered people to gather around food at home once it was safe enough to do so? So that was really the seed of the idea.
I love that. And I love how you were able to pinpoint that need, even in the midst of us figuring out what the hell was going on. So, what is your personal background of your career and profession?
Yeah, I kind of have two past lives. One of them is in retail. This was the beginning of my career. I started in retail. I was a merchant at J. Crew at like peak J. Crew times with Jenna Lyons as creative director and Mickey Drexler as
So
CEO.
cool.
And both of them are just so incredibly talented. And so I was able to sort of learn so much foundational retail knowledge that trickled down from them through the rest of the company, and just so many smart people. I knew nothing about merchandising. I kind of ended up there. And at the time, I thought, oh my God, I'm so bad at this. I went to school, specifically chose a major that did not involve math. And now merchandising is really math heavy. Like, sort of the building blocks of retail are unsurprisingly dependent on math. So, like, what is margin? What is turn? What is what does inventory mean financially? Like all of these things were sort of ingrained like right out of college for me, even though at the time I was like, this is not for me. Spreadsheets are hell. I have to get out of here. Little did I know that I would like pull that information like out of the back of my brain, over a decade later. From there, I campaigned my way into a copywriting position at J. Crew because I felt like what I was really interested in was telling the story of the products and sharing those stories with our customers. And so that's where I learned just a lot about brand storytelling, how important it is to convey the why of a product as much as like the what,
Mhm.
Um, and then the second life was that I took that new editorial skill set and interest and actually pivoted to being one of the first hires at The Infatuation, which is a restaurant discovery platform. And so
Yes, I follow them. They're great.
I was there really early on and I stayed for 6 wonderful years. And was writing and editing others writing about restaurants and managing a team, but that's where I really, learned, more than I could have ever asked for about food, and not just about food, but about how people react to food and what they're looking for and how people talk about food. And so I think ultimately, even though like the pieces at the time seemed a little random, like I have this retail background, I have this food editorial background, now I think that those experiences are really merged in what I'm doing now.
That is such a cool story. Also, for founders who feel like their career is somewhat random, but when you land on what you're supposed to land on, it's like, oh my gosh, this is
Yeah,
why I did such a weird twist and turn and like didn't make sense at the time, but it felt like the right next step and you don't know why because
exactly.
totally all the things you just said, I'm like light bulb, you could totally see that in Big Night.
Totally. And like the thing is, it's never random. That's like my number
Right.
one career advice is like, even if in the moment you're like, why am I here? What am I like? This doesn't feel like it's adding up to like my life's work. Like
Right.
you never know how things are gonna come all the way back around, like who you'll meet, what conversations you'll have, what knowledge that gets ingrained in you that like you think is useless, but then 10 years later, you're like, thank God I know how to do that. I think it always comes back around. You just have to be paying attention to kind of like the signs of how it all adds up.
That's a great reminder. Such a great reminder. When you were then looking at social and being like, okay, people are going to want to host again. People are going to want to gather again, knowing now also a background that you have your own point of view and the unique intersection of all those things. How did you then take that next step of like, okay, I'm going to really do this thing. Like I'm going to get a storefront in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and I'm going to start a really cool curated shop that feels like you're in someone's apartment that's shoppable. That's one of my favorite things about your brand. How did that part happen?
Well, once I had the idea for the shop, this dinner party shop, I started kind of drilling down, thinking like, what is it about that idea that's so interesting to me? Other than like, wow, that sounds like a cute store. It was kind of like, okay, but like, what would that be, and how would that be differentiated from other businesses and stores that I've seen? And I think, and this is where like the merchandising background like really started to come to the forefront, was I just started thinking about, why don't we see food goods sold and merchandised next to tabletop and home goods? Like
Yes.
when we cook at home, yes, there's the food, but there's also like how we're cooking the food and then how we're sharing it, bringing it to the table, and thinking like, why, why don't we see, and this was just the beginning of like tinned fishes beginning to like, become
Yep.
the biggest trend ever. Why don't we see a tin of fish next to like a really cute little dish to serve it? Why don't we see a fancy cheese next to a cheese knife or a cheese board? Why don't we see really special spices that you might use to like roast a chicken next to a platter or napkins or dinner plates? And I became kind of obsessed with it from a merchandising perspective. Like, I remember thinking, like, is there some legal loophole where like I'm not allowed to sell food next to home goods? Like, I really couldn't figure out why I couldn't come up with examples. And that just made me want to try it even more. Like, I was just really fascinated by that product mix because I knew as a consumer, that is what I wanted. I wanted to be able to go into a place and be sort of like inspired by the whole thing I was walking into, but then also be able to walk out with things I could use together while hosting at home. So that was like the first like business impulse. And then it's as simple as one day I was walking down the street really close to my house and saw an empty storefront that I had seen before. It's not like it was newly empty. This was like, again, peak COVID, early 21. And it just hit me funny that day. Like, wow, this empty storefront has floor to ceiling windows. It looks like this little tiny jewel box of a space that I feel like that's like what I'm looking for my first shop. And I called the broker's number in the window just to kind of like, why not? It's a day off, like,
Right.
well, and that's what set the whole thing in motion.
That is incredible that literally you had walked past that storefront quite a few times, and then just one day you're like, I'm gonna
Mhm.
I'm gonna just call and see. So
Mhm.
how I've heard so many interesting stories about launching a retail shop in New York City. Um, how was that experience from Greenpoint? And then you also opened in the West Village, which I love your Greenpoint location, but the West Village location is just at next level of just all the different rooms and nooks and crannies. That is just so fun. How did that experience of then opening up a second storefront happen?
So as you've mentioned, Greenpoint's the original. And as I just mentioned, part of the reason that I felt empowered to give it a shot was the store is like postage stamp size. It's 240 square feet. And the reason that I was so excited about giving that a shot is like going back to that retail fundamentals. I knew that I wanted this store to feel like full of discoveries. And I also knew that with that small of a footprint, I could take on the amount of inventory required to stock it without it was lower risk because it was such a small
Right.
space. Like, I only need so much inventory to fill the store. Um, and even with that original store and all of its 240 square foot mightiness, the vision, the design vision for the store was that you were walking into someone's house and you were like pulling things off of their pantry shelves and like in their kitchen, like, you know, you were seeing a bunch of sponges, like sparkly sponges in their sink, and you could grab those. And the idea, even though it was more of a gesture in Greenpoint because the space is so small, the idea was we're shopping someone's apartment.
Right.
Um, but we were also limited by that small space. So how the second store came about, truthfully, is that I was cold emailed by a broker. I love cold emails. I love to receive them. I love to send them. You never know if you put something out in the universe, what's going to come back. And a broker said, I've never met you. I've actually never been to your first store, but I was just reading a little bit about you online, and I think I might have the perfect spot for you. And that is what led me to the space in the West Village. And at the time, I was not looking to expand to a second location. I had only had, let's see, a year under, not even a year under my belt of the first one. Like it happened really quickly. But I thought, let me just go see this. And genuinely, I walked in, and like the best way I can describe it, it was like a lightning bolt. Like it was like I walked in and thought like, oh no, I have no
I
choice.
need this.
Yeah, and I remember thinking like, oh God, like I really don't know that I can do this right now, but I will be so upset if I can't have this. Because immediately when I walked in, it was already blocked out and looked like someone had at some point lived there. It's this really old building. The rest of the building's residential. It's a ground floor space that's been several shops in the past, but it has all these different discrete rooms that you walk from room to room. And I immediately walked in and was like, cool, this is the dining room. That's the pantry in that room. This could even be a shoppable bathroom. Here's a bar
Mhm.
and here's a kitchen. And like immediately like saw it so clearly that again, it was like, I have to try to make this work.
I got goosebumps just you telling that story because I could just picture you stepping into that space and being like, okay, so this needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
And the
It's
fact
almost
that
a bad feeling. It's almost a bad feeling of like, I
shit.
really can't handle this, but like I have to.
That is so cool. And now you have a cookbook coming out, which I already pre-ordered like such a nerd, like the first day that it was available. I mean, how stunning. How
Here's
stunning. I love a good brand extension also,
I
which,
mean, I I couldn't have imagined when I opened the first store that this was going to be a step of the journey, but I'm so grateful for it. And um you know, because my background is in editorial, there's so much about the shops that I have wanted to tell stories around. You know, I think a lot of people will walk in and be like, I don't get it. Like, what kind of like, okay, so you sell food and you sell home stuff, and like, what is it? A dinner party shop, what does that mean? And that's a completely valid question that I wish I had like wall space to like write to them,
Write it all out.
everything I just told you. But I think when, I was given this opportunity to write the book, it kind of felt like now I get to really tell the story of what I mean when I say any night can be a big night. Like, what does that mean? Let me show
Mhm.
you. And, I always feel like I have done my job with the shops if people walk out feeling inspired to host at home, to gather around food. Like, that's my number one goal, is that when someone walks in the store, they immediately feel like I belong here, I'm included here, I feel happy here. And then the best case scenario is that they walk out and they're like, I want to host more. Like, why don't I have more dinner parties,
Right.
And this book, I really hope, can be the next step of that, where now they have a back pocket kind of guide to hosting at home that they can flip to, for inspiration, for tips and tricks, and also for recipes.
As someone who is aspiring to host more dinner parties and gatherings, I mean, I'm in a very small apartment in the East Village, but as I grow, I want to eventually be in Brooklyn with more space. So honestly, your book, I was like, oh, this is like my vision board, like what I want, what
Great.
I'm seeking to aspire to and hosting and all the things. So, like I said, I pre-ordered and I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited. Yeah, of course. So I know, like I said earlier, so many brands I know on their vision board has Big Night. And I would love to hear from your perspective when you talk about merchandising and curation and how you think about the experience. I would love to hear from your perspective what types of brands maybe that are catching your eye or the best way to approach Big Night. If someone has a cool, innovative product that they're like, I feel like this would be a great fit. Could you walk us through a little bit of the behind the scenes from that perspective?
Sure. I would say first and foremost, when it comes to the food at Big Night, we always want there to be something new for someone to discover. That's like the number one, I don't know, at least one of my highest priorities on the food side of things, because, um, we've all been lucky to be living in like a CPG renaissance
Right.
that I think I think some people think I had this genius idea to open this store like at the same time as this was happening. And I have to say, honestly, like, I did not foresee the fandom around CPG when I opened the store. I knew that people loved special ingredients. I knew that people were cooking more at home. But I think my timing of opening this store at the same time of literal fandom around
Mhm.
like CPG at large, but then also specific brands, like that was actually a happy accident. And sometimes it has even like shocked me, just like the rabid passion. And it's like it's so exciting to watch. And it's a real privilege for us to play a small part in hopefully creating some of that fandom, because like we believe in a product so much and then we're like, you have to try this product.
Right.
And then watching people be like, oh my God, I tried that product and like now I'm addicted to it and I can't stop eating it and I buy it for all my friends. And that's just, it's really exciting to be a part of that life cycle. Um, and I think, because of this CPG renaissance, like there's always new products to try. And also some of our favorites you start to see everywhere. And
Right.
that's super exciting because like more and more people want those products. So for us, it's like a balance of keeping in stock the things that we're constantly, we hear requests for in the store, the brand names that you might already know, but also making sure to really prioritize rotating through newness that we're just excited to share with people. So myself and our grocery buyer, Stacy, are constantly sampling, tasting. We won't bring a product onto the shelves unless we've personally tried it and really do think it's a really quality product that we love. Sourcing from all corners of the internet and definitely, New York City and far beyond. Um, and really just keeping an eye towards differentiation.
Mhm.
And how is this product different than everything else we've tried? how is its use case going to be different? How can we tell the story of how it's different? All of those are things that we definitely think and talk about a lot.
That's literally what I think and talk about all the time as a brand strategist. So when I'm working with an emerging brand, that's literally the first thing we cover of what makes this product different. What
Yep.
is the use cases? What is the story and what would set this apart in the marketplace? So I'm so glad that you just said that because I'm literally going to send this episode to my clients, be like, just don't take my word for it.
Yep.
Listen to the founder of the retail store that's on your vision board. She's saying
Yeah.
it too.
Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome. So what do you see as like the vision of Big Night? What big picture dream scenario, like where would you love to see the brand go?
Speaking of vision boarding, we're doing it right here today.
I
uh,
love that.
Vision boarding for Big Night. My goal and my dream is that Big Night becomes synonymous with living the good life at home. That's really what
Hmm,
our stores are all about, is how can we help people make life at home a little bit more special. And that often happens in the small moments, right? And I
right.
think like that's something that I really try to get at in the book, which is you don't have to be hosting a 12-person dinner party with 3 courses and you've cooked everything from scratch to make those special moments. Sometimes it's so much easier to say to like 1 or 2 people, like, I just bought this amazing cheese. Can you bring over a wine? And can we have like a really luxurious cheese moment at home? Like that's a special moment. And I think there's so many ways to kind of like expand the universe that we've been in, which has been primarily focused on dining, food, table, and think about as well, like what happens when we get up from the table? What are the special moments, throughout the whole house? So that's just what I'm kind of thinking about. But for the here and now, we have these 2 stores that bring me and I hope others joy. We have the book, which I'm just really excited about because I want Big Night to be for everyone. And a lot of people have only been able to experience us either walking into the store or shopping us online. But now with this book, I really feel like it has captured everything we've been working to build in the stores. And now that people can bring that into their own homes, wherever they are, I'm just really excited.
Incredible. I love it. And where can people pre-order or order the book?
You can pre-order or order the book everywhere you buy books.
Amazing.
Bookshop, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. And of course, you can also purchase it from our site. But truly, you will be able to find this book anywhere you buy books.
Well, congratulations on the book. Like I said, such a nerd. I'm so excited to receive my copy because, like, I just love everything you shared today. I love your shop, and even more so now hearing more of the behind the scenes of how it all came together and your vision. Thank you for curating such a cool experience and for supporting so many emerging brands. It was a pleasure having you on today, and just congratulations on everything.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here. What a lovely chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening to Emerging Brands Podcast, and I'll see you next week.